The Long Island serial killer, a chilling mystery, unfolds. As the sun sets over the seemingly tranquil shores of Long Island, New York, an unsettling darkness descends upon Gilgo Beach. The gentle lapping of waves against the shoreline belies a sinister secret that has haunted this stretch of coastline for over a decade. Beneath the sand and tangled undergrowth lie the remnants of a gruesome tale, one that has captivated and terrified the nation in equal measure. This is the story of the Long Island serial killer, also known as Lisk, a phantom predator who has eluded capture and continues to cast a long shadow over the community. The Gilgo Beach murders, as they've come to be known, represent one of the most perplexing and chilling unsolved cases in recent American history. Our journey into this macabre mystery begins on a cold December day in 2010. Little did anyone know that a routine training exercise would uncover a series of grisly discoveries that would shock the nation and set in motion a manhunt that continues to this day. The Discovery. On December 11, 2010, Suffolk County Police Officer John Malia and his cadaver dog were conducting a training exercise near Ocean Parkway, searching for Shannon Gilbert, a 24-year-old sex worker who had gone missing 7 months earlier. What they found instead would change the course of the investigation and reveal a far more sinister narrative than anyone could have imagined. As Malia's dog picked up a scent, the officer's heart raced, but it wasn't Shannon they had found. Instead, wrapped in burlap and half buried in the dense underbrush, lay the skeletal remains of a woman. This discovery was just the beginning. Over the next several days, 3 more bodies were uncovered along the same stretch of beach. All 4 victims were women, and all had been sex workers who advertised their services on Craigslist. The remains were found within a quarter mile of each other, suggesting a pattern that sent a chill down the spines of investigators. The victims were later identified as Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Lynn Costello, Megan Waterman, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Each of these women had disappeared between 2007 and 2010. Their families left to wonder about their fates until this grim discovery. But the horror was far from over. The investigation expands. As spring arrived in 2011, the search area was expanded. What investigators found next only deepened the mystery and heightened the fear gripping the community. Between March and April, 6 more sets of remains were discovered along Ocean Parkway. Among these new victims were Jessica Taylor, whose partial remains had been found in Manorville in 2003, and an unidentified Asian male dressed in women's clothing. The discovery of a toddler's remains, later linked through DNA to another set of partial remains found miles away, added a heartbreaking twist to the already tragic tale. Perhaps most chillingly, investigators also found the skull and hands of a woman whose torso had been discovered in Hempstead Lake State Park back in 1997. This discovery expanded the killer's timeline significantly, suggesting that Lisk had been active for much longer than initially thought. As the body count rose, so did public fear and media attention. The Long Island serial killer had become national news, and the pressure on law enforcement to solve the case intensified. The victims. While each victim in this tragic case deserves to be remembered as more than just a statistic, the sheer number of victims makes it challenging to delve into each of their stories in depth. However, it's crucial to understand that behind each set of remains was a human being with hopes, dreams, and loved ones left behind. Many of the identified victims were sex workers, a fact that initially slowed media coverage and, some argue, the intensity of the police investigation. This aspect of the case highlights the vulnerability of sex workers and the societal prejudices that often leave them unprotected and undervalued. Melissa Barthelemy, the first victim identified, was just 24 years old when she disappeared. A hairdresser from Buffalo, New York, Melissa had moved to the city to pursue her dreams. Her younger sister, Amanda, received a series of taunting phone calls from someone believed to be the killer, using Melissa's cell phone. These calls, placed from busy areas of Manhattan, demonstrated the killer's brazenness and added another layer of cruelty to an already horrific crime. Megan Waterman was only 22 when she vanished. A mother to a young daughter, Megan had traveled from her home in Maine to New York to work. Her disappearance left her family devastated, particularly her mother, who has since become an outspoken advocate for victims and their families. The discovery of the toddler's remains, later identified as the daughter of another victim, added a particularly heartbreaking dimension to the case. It suggested that the killer's victims weren't limited to sex workers and raised disturbing questions about the extent of his crimes. The Shannon Gilbert mystery. While the search that uncovered the first of the Gilgo Beach victims was initially for Shannon Gilbert, her remains were not among those found in December 2010. It wasn't until December 2011, almost exactly a year later, that Shannon's body was discovered in a marshy area near Oak Beach, about half a mile from where she was last seen alive. Shannon's case is particularly intriguing and controversial. On the night of her disappearance in May 2010, she had made a frantic 911 call, claiming that someone was trying to kill her. She was last seen running from a client's house in Oak Beach, knocking on doors and pleading for help before vanishing into the night. Initially, police suggested that Shannon's death was not connected to the other Gilgo Beach murders. They proposed that she had accidentally drowned in the marsh while in a drug-induced state. However, this theory has been hotly contested by Shannon's family and their attorney, who believe she was a victim of the Long Island serial killer. An independent autopsy commissioned by Shannon's family suggested that her death was consistent with homicidal strangulation, contradicting the official ruling. This discrepancy has fueled speculation and controversy, with many questioning whether law enforcement has been fully transparent about Shannon's case and its potential connection to Lisk. The killer's profile. As the investigation progressed, a picture of the killer began to emerge, though much of it remains speculative. Profilers suggest that Lisk is likely a white male in his mid-20s to mid-40s, financially stable and familiar with the South Shore of Long Island. His ability to avoid detection suggests a high level of intelligence and careful planning. The killer's choice of victims, primarily sex workers, and his method of disposing of the bodies indicate a level of organization and forethought. The use of burlap to wrap some of the victims suggests possible connections to gardening or landscaping. One of the most chilling aspects of the case is the killer's use of technology. Not only did he contact victims through Craigslist, but he also made taunting phone calls to a victim's family using the victim's cell phone. This suggests a killer who is tech-savvy and who derives pleasure from not just the act of killing, but also from tormenting the families of his victims. The fact that the killer has managed to evade capture for so long, despite leaving numerous victims and operating in a relatively small geographic area, has led some to speculate that he may have connections to law enforcement or forensic science. However, this remains purely speculative. Suspects and theories. Over the years, several suspects have been considered in the Long Island serial killer case, though no arrests have been made to date. One of the most publicized suspects was John Bittrolff, a carpenter from Manorville, Long Island. In 2014, Bittrolff was arrested and later convicted for the murders of 2 sex workers in the 1990s. His residence in Manorville, where partial remains of some of Lisk's victims were found, and the similarity in victim profile led some to speculate about his involvement. However, he has never been officially named as a suspect in the Lisk case. Another theory that has gained traction is the possibility that the killer could be a former or current law enforcement officer. This theory is based on the killer's apparent knowledge of police procedures and his ability to evade detection. The idea gained further traction when former Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke was sentenced to prison for beating a suspect who had stolen items from his vehicle and then orchestrating a departmental cover-up. Some have speculated that Burke's resistance to FBI involvement in the Lisk case could indicate a connection, though this remains unproven. In early 2020, a new development brought fresh attention to the case. Police revealed a piece of evidence, a black leather belt embossed with the letters WH or HM, depending on how it's viewed. This belt, found at one of the crime scenes, is believed to have been handled by the killer. The release of this information to the public was seen as a sign that investigators were seeking new leads and possibly close to a breakthrough. Impact on the community. The Long Island serial killer case has had a profound impact on the local community and beyond. The beaches of Gilgo and Oak Beach, once popular recreational areas, now carry an eerie stigma. Local residents speak of a lingering unease, a sense that a predator may still be walking among them. The case has also shed light on the vulnerability of sex workers and the need for better protection for those in the sex industry. Advocacy groups have used the Lisk case to call for reforms that would make it safer for sex workers to report crimes and seek help from law enforcement without fear of prosecution. For the families of the victims, the lack of closure continues to be a source of immense pain. Many have become vocal advocates, keeping the case in the public eye and pushing for continued investigation. Their resilience in the face of such tragedy is both heartbreaking and inspiring. The investigation continues. As of 2023, the Long Island serial killer remains at large. The investigation, now over a decade old, continues to be one of the most extensive and expensive in Long Island's history. In January 2023, Rex Hoyerman, an architect from Massapequa Park, was arrested and charged with 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders. While this development brought new hope for resolution, the investigation remains ongoing, with many questions still unanswered. The FBI, initially kept at arm's length, is now fully involved in the investigation. New technologies, including genetic genealogy, the same technique used to identify the Golden State Killer, are being employed in hopes of finally bringing Lisk to justice. The case has spawned numerous books, documentaries, and podcasts, each attempting to shed new light on the mystery or propose new theories. This continued public interest has helped keep the case alive in the public consciousness and may yet play a role in its eventual resolution. The Long Island serial killer case stands as one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries of the 21st century. It is a story of lives cut tragically short, of a community living in fear, and of a killer who has managed to elude justice for over a decade. As night falls over Gilgo Beach, the gentle crash of waves belies the dark secrets buried in the sand. Somewhere out there, perhaps watching, perhaps planning, the Long Island serial killer remains free. But with every passing day, with every new piece of evidence, with every advance in forensic technology, the net draws tighter. For the families of the victims, for the community of Long Island, and for all those captivated by this tragic mystery, one question remains. When will justice finally be served? The hunt for Lisk continues, and with it, the hope that one day the shadows over Gilgo Beach will finally be lifted and the full truth will come to light. If you found this deep dive into the Long Island serial killer case intriguing and want to see more content like this, please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts or theories, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue to bring you in-depth explorations of some of the most perplexing true crime cases in history. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll unravel another mysterious case that has baffled investigators for years.